All right, thank you at home for watching us this hour. I'm Joy Reid. Rachel has the night off, and she will be back on Monday. Okay, so now it is Friday, and you know what that means. News avalanche! We have more on the shocking but not unexpected news out of Saudi Arabia regarding the death of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Much more on that coming up with Congressman Eric Swalwell. But first, today, Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was back in court in the Eastern District of Virginia. Now, we knew that Manafort would be dressed in his green prison uniform. He had been convicted on 8 felony counts of tax fraud and bank fraud this summer, after all. And so when his lawyers requested that he be allowed to show up in more dignified threads, their request was denied by the judge. So we knew what he would be wearing. But who knew Paul Manafort would show up in a wheelchair? Witnesses in the courtroom also observed that a visibly grayer Manafort was also missing his right shoe. In arguing today for a swift sentence on those 8 guilty counts, Manafort's lawyer, Kevin Downing, told the court that there are, quote, significant issues with Mr. Manafort's health right now, and a lot of it has to do with the terms of his confinement. Manafort's lawyer requested that the judge pick a sentencing date as soon as possible so that he could be moved to a facility better equipped to deal with his health issues, whatever they may be. Now, in any case, the judge set a sentencing date of February 8th. The judge also announced that he would drop the 10 charges on which the jury hung at Manafort's trial. Paul Manafort also avoided a second trial in Washington, D.C. by pleading guilty to the charges there and signing a cooperation agreement with Robert Mueller's prosecutors. So that was that. Now, we also recently learned that as part of his cooperation agreement, Manafort has met with Mueller's team 9 times in the past month. In court today, we were looking to see if the government gave us any hints as to the extent or the topics of that cooperation. We did not get any details from Mueller's team, other than it's ongoing. Far from the courtroom, we did get a sense of what else special counsel Robert Mueller is looking into. The Wall Street Journal reported today that Mueller is probing WikiLeaks contacts with conservative activists. The Journal reports that Mueller's team has recently questioned witnesses about the activities of longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone, including potential contacts with WikiLeaks. The Journal further reports that investigators have obtained evidence that one of those conservative activists, the late Peter W. Smith, may have had advanced knowledge of details about the release of emails from a top Hillary Clinton campaign official by WikiLeaks. Now, because this is your normal Crazy Friday, today we also got a rare joint statement from the Director of National Intelligence, the Justice Department, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. The subject, combating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Quote, we are concerned about ongoing campaigns by Russia, China, and other foreign actors, including Iran, to undermine confidence in democratic institutions and influence public sentiment and government policies. These activities also may seek to influence voter perceptions and decision-making in the 2018 and 2020 U.S. elections. And we don't know whether the next piece of news is connected to that, but the U.S. intelligence statement pointing the finger at Russia, China, and other foreign actors was followed about 45 minutes later by the first criminal charges related to Russian interference in the 2018 midterm elections. Now, one interesting thing here, this indictment does not come from the special counsel's office. This is a 39-page complaint filed in the Eastern District of Virginia, the same venue where Paul Manafort appeared today, in which federal prosecutors charged a 44-year-old Russian national who works for an oligarch close to Vladimir Putin. They've charged her with conspiring to interfere in the upcoming midterm elections through the use of divisive rhetoric and disinformation on social media. Sound familiar? Well, you may remember that back in February of this year, Special Counsel Robert Mueller charged 13 individuals and 3 companies, most notably the Russian troll farm called the Internet Research Agency, with using social media to deliver propaganda into the news feeds of ordinary Americans, encouraging them to vote for Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton. While today's criminal complaint was not brought by Robert Mueller, it is related to that earlier indictment. Specifically, prosecutors charged Elena Kushyanova of St. Petersburg, Russia, with being the chief accountant and overseeing all the finances related to that scheme, as well as acting in concert with other conspirators. We learned a few important things today from this court filing. The first being that the Russian attack on our democracy did not end in 2016. Rather, it continues to be very active to this very day. As prosecutors wrote, quote, "The conspiracy has a strategic goal, which continues to this day, to sow division and discord in the U.S. political system, including by creating social and political polarization, undermining faith in democratic institutions, and influencing U.S. elections, including the upcoming 2018 midterm election." Today's complaint also gave us details regarding the financing of that scheme. We learned that while Russia spent approximately $12 million on this effort in calendar years 2016 and 2017, or about $1 million a month, that figure began to rise in 2018. By June of this year, the monthly operating budget was $1.9 million. In the first half of the year alone, the Russians had spent $10 million, which puts them on pace to nearly double the total from 2016 and 2017. As for the content of those social media posts, U.S. prosecutors allege that Russia aimed to sow division in the United States by posting on various topics, including immigration, gun control, the Second Amendment, the Confederate flag, race relations, LGBT issues, the Women's March, and the NFL national anthem debate. We also got to look at some of the images and the memes that the Russians wanted injected into the U.S. political discourse. And while prosecutors show that Russia sought to inflame both ends of the political divide, most of what prosecutors cite in the complaint is clearly intended to benefit Donald Trump. The criminal complaint notes that in August of last year, members of the conspiracy analyzed a large quantity of U.S. news articles, summarized the substance of the articles, and outline ways for the conspiracy to promote them, and then list some of the articles that the Russians sought to promote. Now, as you can see, these would be conservative outlets like Breitbart and the Daily Caller and Fox News, as well as even further right-wing outlets like InfoWars. According to the complaint, the Russians working for the Internet Research Agency were given detailed instructions on how to post and share these articles for the best results. For example, the 8 dirtiest scandals of Robert Mueller no one is talking about. Reading from the complaint, quote, "A member of the conspiracy directed that the article be messaged in the following way. Special prosecutor Mueller is a puppet of the establishment. List scandals that took place when Mueller headed the FBI. State the following. It is a fact that the special prosecutor who leads the investigation against Trump represents the establishment, a politician with proven connections to the U.S. Democratic Party." Never mind that Robert Mueller is a Republican. It goes on to emphasize that the work of this commission is damaging to the country and is aimed to declare impeachment of Trump. Another article to be shared was one from the Daily Caller with the headline, "McCain thinking a wall will stop illegal immigration is crazy." Instructions for sharing that article, quote, "State that dishonorable scoundrels such as McCain immediately aim to destroy all of the conservative voters' hopes as soon as Trump tries to fulfill his election promises." Or take this InfoWars article, "Civil war if Trump taken down." Russians were instructed that when sharing that article, they should, quote, "name those who oppose the president and those who impede his efforts to implement his pro-election promises." So here we are now 18 days from the midterm elections today. And we got a new in-depth look at how Russia is working to shape that debate right here in the U.S. It is not subtle, and neither was the reaction of the president today when asked to comment.
Mr. President, today the Justice Department unsealed an indictment against a Russian national who's accused of trying to influence the election in 2018.
Nothing to do with my campaign. You know, all of the hackers and all of everybody that you see, nothing to do with my campaign. If they're hackers, a lot of them probably like Hillary Clinton better than me.
A lot of them probably like Hillary Clinton better than me. Well, today's indictment told us a lot of things. It certainly did not tell us that. Joining us now is Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney from Michigan. Barbara, appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, Joy. Glad to be with you.
So let's go back and talk about the money. This is the financing of the efforts to do disinformation in the U.S. Does it surprise you that that particular indictment, which is sort of related to when we saw the 13 Russians indicted, didn't come from the Mueller world? It came from a different place.
Yeah, at first, yes, but I think if you look at it carefully, you can see a couple of things that might suggest why that would be. One is that Robert Mueller's mission is solely related to the 2016 presidential campaign, and this one goes beyond that, including the 2018 campaign. So I think trying to keep his focus narrow, especially as he gets closer to the end, I think. And the other is that Robert Mueller himself is named in this initiative. And so to the extent he is a victim of this crime, maybe it was cleaner to have other prosecutors be prosecuting it. So those might be a couple of reasons that this is a standalone case. But I was surprised to see it come down. It shows that the influence campaign is not over. It continues and it persists and remains a threat in the upcoming elections.
Well, that is the point. And I'm wondering if, as a prosecutorial matter, is it possible then to build a bridge backwards from the financier, from the amount of money being spent? If a lot of the actors overlap with what happened in 2016, can you build a prosecutorial bridge between the 2018 and 2016 efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a possibility. And following the money is so often a strategy that prosecutors use to try to link together individuals, initiatives, groups. And so I'm sure they'll be looking at that, the money trail, if they haven't already, to see what links exist between this individual, the group that was indicted in February. And then again, if they should find any links to the Trump campaign, they could certainly always bring it together with what Robert Mueller is looking at, because it is all one Justice Department. And so they share information with each other, even though this case came out of the Eastern District of Virginia.
Right. Let's jump around just a little bit, because there's also the WikiLeaks piece of it. And so I'm wondering if it's possible to prosecute people who are related to or just sympathetic to the Trump campaign just for knowing that WikiLeaks is going to drop stolen emails. Is that a crime?
You know, mere knowledge is probably not enough. There is a crime called misprision of a felony, where you're aware of a felony and you fail to report it. It's very rarely charged, though. I would think there would have to be some criminal act besides knowledge to make it a crime. But it's a fairly easily satisfied element in crimes of aiding and abetting or conspiracy if you show that someone assisted in any way, and that could even be providing advice about the timing of dissemination of stolen emails, or to even encourage the commission of a crime, could be enough for conspiracy. So it doesn't take much, but probably a little more than mere knowledge.
Right. And to go now back to where we started with Manafort, the fact we don't know exactly what his cooperation entails, but what we do know is that he probably knows a lot. I mean, this is a guy who knows a little something about election interference. He had a little something to do with it in Ukraine. If you're looking at this from the outside looking in, what kind of a big picture is Manafort best able to provide? Is it on the financing of the overall operation? Give us a little bit of your prognostication on what it is he could be giving up.
Yeah, well, the fact that, as you reported, he has met with Mueller's team 9 times, and I've also read reporting that each of those meetings has lasted at least 6 hours. So, you know, doing the math, 54 hours that he has sat down with them. My guess is that they are showing him all kinds of documents and asking him to explain them. I think he can certainly explain the money trail and all of these things, but I think the most valuable thing he might be able to provide is the role of some of these Russian oligarchs. To what extent were they doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin to influence elections? And I think that piece is the part that's probably been missing from what Robert Mueller has had access to. And Paul Manafort is likely a person who can provide that in light of what we already know about his connections with some of these Russian oligarchs. And so I imagine that is some of the ground that they're covering in those sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of Americans are waiting with bated breath to find out what it is that Mueller is going to put together and how he sort of draws that whole picture together. Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney from Michigan, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.